If you haven't met her, I'm sorry for you, because we're so blessed to have Elizabeth Pietropoli here in the community. I've known her family for years. Her brother Thomas is here in the audience as well. Grew up in Malone, where I was a priest for some years, and then has had a number of jobs elsewhere, but has just over a year ago came back here to the Canton-Potsdam area and has made such an impact already. She comes with a wealth of information, but not unlike John Miner, also a great depth of hope and faith, and so we're real blessed to have her with you. Please welcome Elizabeth Pietropoli.
Thank you for being here. Thank you for your commitment to becoming more aware of this. This is not pleasant stuff, it's not easy stuff, it's not happy stuff, but it is real. And I'm been really gratified in different conversations with different people that people want to know, as opposed to pre-pandemic. I had many struggles with students and parents and other educators trying to make people believe this is real, this is dangerous, this is a very powerful force you have unleashed in the life of your children and your own lives, frankly. I apologize for the frankness with which I will speak, but I think it is necessary. So just a little caveat. I don't miss it. My most recent teaching experience was high school boys at McQuaid Jesuit in Rochester, so that's the background I'm coming from. So yes, please be patient with me. Okay, I guess my biggest pet peeve, as my students would attest, is social media. And I think social media promotes, social media promotes siloing, echo chambers, and the spread of misinformation. And I want you to think about something. Some of you are old enough to remember this, that trying to cite Wikipedia as a source would get you in huge trouble. I remember this, writing papers in college and no, can't do this, cite your sources, cite your sources, cite your sources, right? And now it's a legitimate source of information. So think about the places where you derive your information, your knowledge. I used to put these things in the board with my students. So where are you getting your information? Cite your sources, right? So you come to me with a story, you come to me with something that happened in the news, allegedly, but you don't have any citation for this. So somebody put something online, or TikTok, or somebody put something somewhere, and you're believing it, and you're liking it, and you're spreading this, but cite your sources, right? So just something to mull over yourselves, right? So what are our sources of information? So where do we derive our knowledge, our information, and what are we conveying through that, right? So cite your sources. I also, through my experience with teenagers, believe very strongly that social media really incentivizes the 7 deadly sins. And I guess that's a strong statement, but any of you who are familiar with apps are going to understand what I'm saying. And this is not directly related to the 7 deadly sins, but this is a big problem is suicidal ideation, right? So I believe that there's a lot of incentivizing of real darkness in social media, right? So there are online communities that support people's choice to end their lives. So my sister is a teacher at Portsmouth Abbey School. It's a boarding school in Portsmouth, Rhode Island. And she had a long talk with a student a couple of weeks ago who's brilliant, gorgeous, wonderful kid, and she has a plan to end her life at 60. Okay, and she finds support for this online. So there's going to be information, there are going to be resources to direct you to places. So for a 16-year-old to find ways to end her life at 60, because it's not worth living after 60 after all, right? Identity confusion, which is huge with girls especially, and body image issues, eating disorders, extreme exercise, challenges, diets, right? I'm going to talk a little bit more about that, but this is everywhere. This is not just, all you need to do is go to some app and you're gonna find a challenge to do something extreme. This is not new, this has been going on for about a decade. Things that will hurt you, hurt other people. There was a challenge a couple of years ago, I remember being scared of this. It was like, hit a teacher, right? So film it on TikTok and hit a teacher. They didn't, nobody did that to me, but I mean, the fear was real that they would do this. Because why? Like, what would prompt a child to do that, to hit a teacher? Attention, because you'll get liked, right? Exactly. You'll have more followers, because if you have followers, imaginary followers, you will be popular, you will be liked, you will be loved, all these things. You can be an influencer. Oh yes, that's one of my rants, influencers. The other thing social media normalizes is deviant sexual behavior and expectations. Kids are learning from influencers and pornography what sex is. Drug experimentation and access to drugs. So TikTok challenges with drugs popularizes what was once esoteric and fringe. I saw this, a real uptick in experimentation with psychedelics in the last couple of years. I know Joe Rogan has done a lot of interviews with people who are really into psychedelics. And I think kids are, in my experience, they were using things at a much increased rate than they had been prior to that. I started teaching in 2001, and the conversations kids were having about drugs were very different in 2001 or 2010 or 15 than they were in 2022. It's just a way to cope, and it's been normalized, and they're relying on these things to feel, well, to feel at all. So, very bad. The unattainable lifestyle of influencers, so their sex life, their appearances, and so much of it is actually fake. And I remember one of my students saying that in class, like, Ms. P, this is just fake. They're standing next to rented houses. The Bugatti's not theirs. The Louis Vuitton's not theirs. All these things, they're not really theirs. They're just standing in front of these things, and they make it look sexy, and they make it look attainable, but even they don't have it, right? So obviously, back to the 7 deadly sins, so social media is incentivizing excess, right? So lust, sloth, envy, jealousy, right? Compare and despair. I used to say this to kids all the time, right? That's why I was on Facebook for like 2 months, and I realized there are so many people who don't talk to me in person, but they want to be my friend. It's very weird, so. And the comparison piece, right? So compare and despair. You're gonna look at other people and think, I don't have this, I don't have that, what's wrong with me, right? And narcissism, obsession with appearance, this has all been really ratcheted up with social media in the last few years. We all know somebody who advertises themselves obnoxiously online, right? Every one of us knows this. I can go on many rants about this. Like, I mean, so many women, especially women in my age range, are like, my hubby is my best friend, my bearded, beautiful husband, and my farm are so perfect, and I have a bunch of children who do everything perfectly, and they're my best friends too, and we all raise chickens. This may not be real, right? This may not actually be real, and who cares, right? Raise your chickens, I don't care. Just don't make the rest of us feel bad because of you and your chickens. So, that's also problematic, right? This presentation of perfection that is not attainable, it's not real. I have known people, probably all of you have known people who present themselves in a certain way, and the reality is completely different, right? The marriage falls apart, the relationship falls apart, the children are a mess, whatever. I mean, I'm not trying to impugn people, but it's not real. It's not real, and it's impacting people when you're comparing yourself to this incessantly, and we're adults. What does this do to a child, right? What does it do to a child who is looking at this all the time, Especially, I'll go from the perspective of a recovering teenage girl, right? If you're looking at other people all the time and comparing your body and comparing your hair and comparing your clothes and comparing everything, you feel absolutely worthless. And these companies who are behind these advertisements and are sponsoring these influencers make a ridiculous amount of money doing this. So they're motivated to keep you feeling ugly and worthless. So this is not like magnanimity here. This is not people who love you are invested in your thriving or your flourishing as a human person. They want you to feel awful because they make more money that way. So it also, social media also promotes and elevates, provides unlimited exposure to, I'm gonna give you a list of names here because I was in contact with a couple of my former students because they know my rants and they were just trying to help me out with like these influencer names that if you have teenagers, you should know them. You should. If you don't, you should. Okay, so Andrew Tate, Dave Portnoy, Dan Bilzerian, Mr. Beast, his real name is Jimmy Donaldson. He has more than 300 million followers, okay? Jake Paul, Logan Paul, some of you are gonna know these names, right? 66 million followers, annual earnings of $34 million. Dan, you're gonna have to help me out with this. Charlie D'Amelio? Okay, she and her sister have been popular for years. The Kardashians, of course, Elliot Tabelli, I can't even tell you what the name of his organization is. He's been on my radar for years. I think he's a jerk. Can't say what I really think, but anyway, he's a jerk. He's an adult, like he's a grown adult and he should know better. But these are from my students, okay? So this is from 19-year-old college freshman who sent me, it was actually a Forbes list of influencers, top 20 top influencers in the last year or so. So this is right now. This is not, this is not something that I'm trying to, this is not hyperbole. This is really who is influencing your children. And when they have, 300 million followers and they're making obscene amounts of money, they have an unwieldy influence on society. Athletes, musicians, I know that I can't remember, oh my gosh, I can't remember the name of the musicians right now, but I do remember my students following avidly a lot of musicians and athletes. And I'm not saying that's bad, but you also want to be aware of the things that they're promoting, right? Because it may be more than just like a great fitness routine or listen to my song. There might be a lot of other content that is going along with that. The other thing that this is where my caveat comes in, that sorry. The other thing is the connection between influencers and things like OnlyFans. And some of you are gonna know what OnlyFans is and some of you are not. It was my students who told me about OnlyFans. It's basically a pornography site for anybody. So anybody can become a content creator, which is a euphemism for porn. Okay, so people subscribe to this and they can make demands of the person. And one of the most popular female gamers, she's an influencer, has adult content only sites, and she has an OnlyFans. Okay, so if your kids are following this person and gaming with her, right? Because this is another thing that I think is really, really dangerous. We're gonna get to that in a minute, but the online gaming community and the toxicity of it and the language that is used. So just be careful, be aware of what games they're playing and who they're following and who they're allowing to influence them, right? Yeah, please don't look up OnlyFans, but that's what it is. I mean, I think it's wildly popular. It's been around, probably 3 or 4 years. I remember my students telling me what it was, and I was so glad to know. Not really. Anyway, better to know than not know, I guess. And the other thing I think social media really does is it exercises control over expectations. So what your expectations are of your life, right? So if your goal in life is to be Andrew Tate, or it's to be, I don't know, any of these other, or Logan Paul, I don't know, it is controlling expectations in ways that are really powerful and really, really destructive. And a lot of these influencers have dropped out of high school because they're making so much money. There's no reason to be educated, there's no reason to stay in school. So just drop out of high school. I remember kids telling me that, like, I'm just gonna drop out of high school and move to LA. Great plan, what's your backup? Okay, so maybe you wanna think this through a little bit, you and your music. Yeah, think of a new one. So expectations, focus, perceptions of reality, right? So I'm not gonna get into this, but like the metaverse, AI, VR, right? Really, really important to think about this. And belief systems, right? So a lot of these sites promote content that is related to belief systems that may, I would argue, likely contradict your own. So be wary of that. Like, what are the belief systems that are being promoted by these sites? And we also have to acknowledge that there's been a massive generational shift, right? So things have changed at an absurd pace. Even in the last, like John said, right? Even in the last 10 or 12 years, I saw a huge shift pre and post pandemic, right? So, yeah, between 2020, 2022, I mean, things changed so fast. The constant comparison to others is fueling depression, despair, envy, lust, all of these things, right? Kids learn what they look at. So I think this is a really important thing to kind of think about and engage. So they're learning what they look at, and that includes you. So what are you modeling to them about your own screen time, right? So what are they, when they look at you and you're like this, you know, what are they learning about their value and their worth? The other thing is this absolute privacy and this fear of missing out. I don't know if kids say FOMO anymore, I don't know, but they do, okay. So there's this huge, huge fear of missing out. So what is my friend doing? What is this person doing? What is going on? I mean, this person has this, and this is this party that I wasn't invited to, and now we know. Like when we were teenagers, you'd hear about it later, like you were not included in this, or somebody would call you and say, oh, this was so fun without you. Great, thanks. But now you know in real time, because you can watch that party going on. You can see it, you're sitting in your room by yourself, you can watch that party, you can watch these people having fun without you. We didn't experience that. There's a level of exclusion and really pain that is being inflicted on these kids that is awful, that we did not have to deal with. And I cannot say that enough, is that it's completely different for these kids than it was for us. You know, probably the worst things that have ever been said to me were online when I was in college, but it was only shared with me and a couple of other people. Like, thank God these things were not around when I was that age, because it would have just been devastating, absolutely devastating. So just really have compassion, have patience, and be aware that things are completely different. Things are completely different, and there are ways in which we cannot understand what these kids are experiencing. And I think it's also good to be aware that there are internet pioneers who are wary of all these changes. Janet Lanier, other people who were really instrumental in the development of tech have raised the alarm and said, maybe we're going a little too fast. I don't know if this resource was shared, but a godfather of AI has said, this is dangerous, right? We might want to pump the brakes a little bit because we're moving so fast. The other thing, I think this is really important to talk about, is the impact on sleep, right? So sleep, I did not know that kids were staying up until 2, 3, 4 a.m. and it got way worse during the pandemic. Okay, so I remember kids coming in to school saying, oh, I didn't go to bed till 2, I didn't go to bed till 3, I didn't go to bed. Like, why are you not going to bed? You're not going to bed because this is in front of you and it's glowing and you're reading things or you're watching things and it's fueling your anxiety. So that's another thing, is that kids aren't sleeping. This wasn't a thing when we were growing up. Like any of you know people who didn't go to bed till 3 in the morning when they were 15 years old? Okay, all right, I did not.
On a Saturday night.
Maybe on a Saturday night, right?
I lived in a farm town, so if we were out of school by 10 p.m., we were working.
Okay. But by and large, right, it was, you know, being up in the middle of the night with a screen in front of you was not.
No, it's usually not.
Yeah, well, that's different. It's a living thing, right? And I got a bunch of stories here from teaching. I guess I don't need to tell all of them, but one of the ones that I found really moving, or it was sad, was a kid I was really close to, and I don't know, this is like 8 years ago now, and he came to me in the middle of the day, and I think he was a senior. He said, Miss P, I didn't sleep. I said, okay, Connor, why didn't you sleep? Like, fine. And he said, because this girl was texting me all night long. I was like, oh, great, this is gonna go bad fast. And it wasn't that. She was texting him because she was suicidal, right? So she was hurting herself and thinking of hurting herself more. And he said, I don't know what to do. This is a 17-year-old boy, right? Like, he's not equipped to deal with this. So I went to the dean, and we called the school where the girl was a student and got her help. But that's just one example. I saw that happen more and more and more and more with my students, that they'd be like, I don't know what to do, this girl is saying this person is saying this, I don't know what to do, I don't know what to do, I need help. So these kids are dealing with things that we didn't have to deal with on a huge scale like that all the time. Body image. All right, so I will never forget the D1 football players in my room crying because they hated themselves so much. Okay, so these are boys who have everything that men are told to want, right? They're tall, they're good looking, they're amazing athletes, they're popular, girls are chasing them around. Things they were saying to them on social media was disgusting, right? All these girls, and they're crying because they hate themselves, right? Like, my legs are too skinny, my arms are too skinny, my shoulders are this. People make fun of me. I go to the gym and people make fun of me. I do this, people make fun of me. And so this is a very real issue. And my most recent experience teaching is with boys, so that's why I'm saying this, but it's even worse for girls, right? So it was very, very sad. There was a kid who was playing lacrosse, D1 lacrosse, and I remember him saying to me, I'm just numb. I don't know how to feel anymore, I'm just numb. And a lot of this is these screens, right? So it's taken away kids' capacity to feel and respond in ways that we had. Another thing is, so what is the thing that makes you feel worse about yourself? And after the pandemic, kids would say their phones. So what is the thing that makes you feel worse about yourself? And it's this. I said, why does it make you feel so? It's just a phone. How does it have the capacity to do this? Because all you need to do is look on something and you'll have 20 people telling you how ugly you are, right? How worthless you are, how stupid you are, how, whatever it is, whatever the terrible thing is, or the theory you have about yourself, this is gonna confirm it and make it worse, so metastasizes, right? A level of conformity, my sister was talking about this when I was asking her about what our teenage girls really struggling with. She said the level of conformity. She said everybody's dressing the same. Makeup rituals, teenage girls worrying about wrinkles on their faces. This is just crazy. So the level of conformity that is demanded of teenagers is something that we never experienced. Depression, anxiety, obviously huge issue. So I want to go back to gaming for a minute, the toxicity of online gaming communities. And I think a lot of people feel a protection in the anonymity. And I remember my students, this is years ago, coming to me and saying, we're not going to tell you what these people are saying. And it's grown adults, right? Saying these things, it's too disgusting. And I have a high threshold. I don't shock easily, but it was too disgusting. They would not tell me what these grown adults were saying to them because it was so gross. But some of the things they did share with me were really misogynistic, anti-Semitic, just disgusting, really vile things. There's a lot of pornographic imagery in gaming, sex and violence. So you're gonna know what Grand Theft Auto is. So I guess that's the only one that I know at all, really. But I am not a gamer. But many video games are replete with graphic sexual imagery and hybrid sexualized human animals and humanoids. Okay, sorry if that's scandalous, but it's the truth. So just be really wary of what your kids are playing, watching, and the capacity to focus, time management. I remember kids saying about YouTube, this is years ago, I watched something on YouTube, I watched 3 hours of YouTube, and I have no idea what I watched. I have no recollection. I have no idea. I just lost those 3 hours. I didn't absorb anything. We've all done that. I've done that, right? Oh, this is a great video about, something esoteric, and where did that time go? So I'm gonna go back to this question of sexuality and porn just briefly, and then I'll wrap up. But I had a student in 2009, because this is a long time ago, saying to me, I don't even need porn anymore, Miss P. Girls send me naked pictures all the time. Okay, so that's something I think we should be really aware of, is how long this has been going on and how accepted this is. Sextortion, obviously you touched on this, John. There were 2 tragic cases in St. Lawrence County 2 years ago, right? Where children took their own lives. This happened every year I was teaching. There were kids who were bullied online, and not at my school, but in the Rochester area, took their own lives. So kids' introduction to sex and bodies is porn. This is not Hugh Hefner, right? This is not your grandfather's porn. As depraved as he was, the deep web and dark web provide all manner of live action fantasies, which escalate when the viewer becomes more and more desensitized to what he or she is viewing. Okay, we all know this. This is not going to be news to you, but it is, and it's also stupid and ignorant. Sorry to be harsh, but it's stupid and ignorant to say that this is just men. It's not. So girls are huge consumers of pornography, and people's experience of sex is porn, and it's all over the internet. And what would have been considered porn 20 or 30 years ago, I mean, it's just so normalized now. My sister was talking about Euphoria. Probably some of you know what Euphoria is, hopefully. Yeah, and that's really popular, or was really popular with kids, right? And just look it up. Sexual violence, expectations of BDSM, violence and intimate partner encounters because of pornography, and incentivized by influencers who normalize fetishes and abuse. And I'm not going to be specific because it's really graphic and awful, but the things I had kids say to me about expectations in intimate encounters made me sick. It made me want to throw up. It's one of the most upset most upset I've ever been with students was a kid telling me something about an expectation in a sexual encounter with his girlfriend. So the normalization of violence and violence within sex is awful. It's awful and it's disgusting, and I wish I didn't know it, but I do, and it's horrible. But to pretend it's not real is extremely dangerous. It's stupid. It's just stupid. Okay, so distortion of body image, inability to see the other person as a person, obviously we know all these things. I'm going to leave some of that for Father Mark to cover with theology of the body, but I want to close with a line from Father Ricardo. Father John Ricardo is a really awesome guy, but what we look at is what we become. I have this in my kitchen. I have a sticky note in my kitchen, but so what are we looking at? Right, so what are we looking at? How is what we're looking at defining us? Right, so what we look at is what we become. So what is this? What am I looking at? What am I listening to? What am I absorbing? What impact does this have on kids, on their brains, on their innocence, right? Just something to think about, like why would you not watch Game of Thrones with a 5-year-old? You don't have to answer, but just think about it. Like why would you not watch it with a 5-year-old? You wouldn't, but why wouldn't you? Right? Why wouldn't you watch it with a 5-year-old? Exposure to things children can't process is highly destructive, right? It's highly, highly destructive. What impact did it have on you? Probably some of us, many of us probably had exposures to things that were traumatizing as children, right? What impact did it have on us? And think about that in what we're allowing our kids to see, right? How many bodies, this is another thing I want you to think about, like how many bodies, airbrushed, perfect bodies have kids seen before they're confronted with the real one? Okay, how many bodies have you seen before there's a real one in front of you? Right, so disappointment is inevitable. The things that I heard kids say would make you sick. But if all you've seen is porn, then you're going to be disappointed. One of my students said, I remember him saying this, I'm really close to this kid, and he said, porn impacted my ability to interact with girls. Like I couldn't have conversations with them. It was impacting everything. I mean, when I stopped looking at porn so much, it helped me talk to girls normally. So I have some homework questions for you. I don't know if they were shared.
I know one place.
Okay, all right, so this is just to think about. Obviously, there's not a, there's not a test on this at the end, I promise. Well, my students would tell you I was a really easy grader. Discussion counted for a lot with me. Okay, so, homework questions. So, take out your phones, not now, but take out your phones and see how many hours a week you are on Facebook, TikTok, Instagram, Snapchat, whatever your drug of choice is. How long are you spending on these apps, right? One of my students, the boys they would have a competition to see who's the biggest loser, right? Like who's spending the most time. And this kid was 36 hours on Snapchat. Like, what are you doing? 36 hours, oh, it's my girlfriend, I saw my girlfriend. Yeah, right, your imaginary girlfriend. Okay, so 36 hours on Snapchat, what? This is bad. Okay, so I want you to think about that. Like some of you are gonna say, oh, I don't spend any time on my phone, but we all do, right? I don't use apps, but I'm on my phone a lot, right? I am. Second question. Okay, so think about the impact of screens and social media on your opinions, on your values, on your relationships, and on your perceptions of reality, right? Okay, so how are these screens and social media impacting you? And for what purpose or end do you most use your phone? Is it communication? That's what I'm using it for, right? It's texting and calling and yeah. But what are you using it for? Like what is the end? Is this a tool or is this a tether? Right? Am I tethered to this? I don't even know whose this is. I keep touching it. Sorry. It's not my phone. And what are you communicating
You
to?
could answer that text from my wife.
Yeah, there is one. What are you communicating to your children about screen time? Kids hate competing with your phone for your attention and your affection. Heard this so much from kids. My mom's more interested in her phone than me. Okay. Very sad. How do adult failures to regulate impact children? What is permissible and encouraged societally that contravenes your own values and beliefs? Okay, so how do our failures to regulate impact children? Okay. All right. And that's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Elizabeth. It's like scales falling from the eyes when she gets going on these things. Don't look up everything that she mentions, but I remember, brought back a memory for me, is just when I was growing up, I don't even remember how old we were, but maybe 5th or 6th grade, and that's when I'm old enough that's when the Nintendos and the Segas were just starting to come out, and I was like, Joe got one, and Eric got one, and can we get one? I think I tried it once, and they're like, no, we love you too much for that. Oh, okay. And it was hard whenever they would talk about the game. In retrospect, had I known what I knew now, I would have never even asked. So thank you very much, Elizabeth. We've got a 5-minute break.